After the impact that The Sound of Freedom had last year, many people believe that it was the most important film of 2023. But when it comes to the new follow-up movie, The Sound of Hope, I knew that I just had to see it. And being fortunate enough to see it before it hits theaters on July 4th, I can honestly say that I think that this might be the most important film of 2024. Let's talk about it. Now, per usual, I won't be discussing anything that can't be found in the trailer or the synopsis, so you don't have to worry about any spoilers. So similar to The Sound of Freedom, Sound of Hope is also inspired by a true story. If you aren't aware of the story of Possum Trot, it's about Reverend Martin and his wife Donna as they decide to adopt traumatized children stuck in foster care that no one else wants to adopt.
70% of the kids in the system are there because of neglect.
We want the ones that nobody else wants.
Their decision was met with lots of trials and pain, but as a result, they inspired their small church to adopt all of the orphan children in the surrounding cities. So The Sound of Hope follows that story and shows how powerful their story truly is. Now let's go ahead and discuss the production real quick before I discuss why I believe that this movie is so important. Now when it comes to what I liked, there's a lot that I appreciated about this movie. First off, it continues the positive direction that Christian and faith-based films have been going in that the production quality was top tier and was very well done. To be completely honest, I think that this may have possibly been the best produced Christian film that I've seen so far. At no point did I feel like I was watching a cheap or an amateur film. From the camera shots, to the color grading, to the wardrobe, to the settings, to the music, this movie was very professionally made. And with films like The Shift and The Sound of Freedom and Jesus Revolution and more, the high quality production of these faith-based films is so encouraging, especially as they compete with Hollywood for relevance and respect in our culture. Now, this was definitely a Christian movie, but I don't mean that in a way that carries a negative connotation. A lot of Christian movies have a certain stigma because the quality is usually dumbed down a little bit. The Christian elements usually feel a little bit forced and feel more like a sermon rather than a movie. And a lot of the times it feels like the writing is compromised for the sake of elevating a Christian message. But what I really loved about this movie was that it included all of those Christian elements like prayer and scripture reading, but it did it in a way that never felt forced or awkward or cheesy. Now, I know that this is an incredibly tough thing for producers to pull off, so I thought that the writer did an exceptional job in this movie. Now, something that I was initially worried about was the pacing and the tone because I am not a fan of drama movies, like at all. I get bored way too easily. But honestly, in this one, I thought that they nailed it in this area because when the film delivers emotional scenes, it delivers. The film was so emotional and emotionally engaging that there wasn't any point where I was actually bored by the story. But with that being said, if I did have a gripe, it would have to be with some of the accents in the movie. Now, I will say that it could definitely be me because lately I feel like accents have been bugging me in a lot of different movies, so you may not even notice it and it may not even be a problem for you. But personally speaking, I found some of the thick Southern accents to be a bit off at some points in the movie. And granted that this movie was based on a true story of a church in Royal, Texas, and I'm from Denver, so again, it could just be me. But still, as the film went on, I kind of got used to them and they really weren't all that noticeable by the end of the movie. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about what I took away from the film as a Christian and why I think that it is the most important film of 2024. All right, so much like its predecessor, Sound of Freedom, the faith-based nature of this film had a lot of themes that I could get behind. The same way that The Sound of Freedom shed light on the suffering that children endure from trafficking, this film exposes the perils of the modern foster care system. And as I watched the story of how the town of Possum Trot dealt with this, what struck me was seeing just how great of an impact can follow from one person's decision to be faithful to God's calling in their lives. This movie did an excellent job conveying not only the adversity and hardships and trauma that children in foster care can go through that many of us just simply aren't aware of, but also just how rampant this issue is. And I also love just how much the humanity came through in this movie. A lot of time, the characters in Christian movies can feel really unrelatable, but not for this movie. This movie felt like real people going through real events and having real raw emotions. Emotions that a lot of us would relate to if we were in their position. Reverend Martin and his wife Donna, like many of us when we're faced with seemingly impossible obstacles, faced the temptation of avoiding following through for what they knew that God was calling them to do. Whether because of uncertainty, difficulty, or thinking that our decisions just won't change anything, it can be easy for us to come up with a reason to quit before we even start, rather than just obeying and trusting God with the results. In a strange way, what the Martins experienced is similar to what Moses experienced when he encountered God in the burning bush. When God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, We see a hesitant Moses that repeatedly tried to rationalize his way out of the task. He experienced self-doubt just as the Martins did. He doubted his own abilities and asked, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And in the movie, the Martins also started to doubt that they would be able to take care of the children and themselves. Clearly, Moses was not 100% convinced of the potential impact that he could have on the world, but God still responded with reassurance at every step. Just as Moses' decision to trust God led to the liberation of an entire nation, the Martins' faithfulness also inspired others in their community to adopt and care for children, resulting in the adoption of all 77 kids in the surrounding areas who needed a loving home. So what we can learn from this is that when faced with a tough decision, you might think that what you do won't make a big difference, but you never know how God can use it to accomplish great things, which is why I think that this is potentially the most important film of 2024. And here's why. Just like what The Sound of Freedom did for the problem of protecting children from trafficking, Sound of Hope cast a bright spotlight on the issues of abuse and neglect in the foster care system. And with over 400,000 children still in foster care, movies like this are so important to get the message out about the harsh realities that can often be ignored. And likewise, this can serve as an opportunity for us believers to truly make an impact at solving this problem. And maybe, just like Donna, perhaps you believe that you should adopt to give a child in need a loving home and family. If this is you, just like the Martins, then I believe that you should prayerfully consider this. But of course, even though adoption is a beautiful way to help, some of us simply aren't in a position to do so. Thankfully, there's other ways that we could use our resources to make an impact on this issue. We can donate to nonprofits that really help to combat this issue, or something as small as even purchasing a ticket for this film can still make a huge difference. Last year, even though Sound of Freedom was initially seen as a lower budget film, because of the faithful people like yourself, it became the 10th biggest movie in the US last year, grossing over $250 million in ticket sales. Now, this was significant, not only because it sends Hollywood a message that we're willing to put our money where our mouths are and support movies with positive Christian values, but it also inspired actual legislation to be passed to protect victims of human trafficking. Just this month, new legislation inspired by the movie was passed in Alabama that will protect trafficking victims. According to this article, the Alabama governor signed into law the Sound of Freedom Act, which changed the penalty for people convicted of trafficking. House Bill 42, the Sound of Freedom Act, elevates Alabama's anti-human trafficking law to become the toughest in America. The new law raises the penalty for first-degree human trafficking to a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment when the victim was a minor. So it's because of this that we can realize that even just purchasing a ticket can have a huge impact. Just like how it was with The Sound of Freedom, we have yet another opportunity for this movie to make such a change that can really help the children, which is why I think that this is without a doubt the most important film of 2024. So I hope that you'll go see the film, and if you feel led to, go ahead and click my link down below. It's my hope that we can continue to promote movies like this as a way to help make an impact on culture. Those are my thoughts on the film, but go ahead and let me know. Do you plan on seeing it? Have you seen the trailer yet? And if so, what do you think? Go ahead and drop a comment and let me know down below. See you guys next time.